Hi, welcome to Poetic Technique. This is my first time recording a video, so it might be a little bit awkward. I hope to get a bit more comfortable with this process as the term goes on. If you're not signed up for Poetic Technique, you shouldn't be watching this video. If you are, you're in the right place. I just wanted to take a moment to give a little bit of an introduction and a course overview before we get started. So we're going to cover some of the basics of the class today. I'm going to try to keep this really short and sweet. It's basically just a time for me to say hi, introduce myself, and let you know some of the highlights of the class. So first things first, I'm Zach Lingy. My pronouns are they, them. You can call me Mix L or Colonel L or Captain L or basically any honorific that doesn't include doctor or professor, because I'm not yet a doctor and I'm just an instructor. So we'll start there. A little bit about me. I went to the University of Texas at Austin for my undergrad and I studied English. And then I went to the UT's sister school in San Antonio and got another degree to study English. And I'm finishing up my PhD here at FSU. I have studied poetry intensively for the last, I'd say, 6 years. That's when I got really serious about it. And before that, I studied, like I mentioned, English at both schools. My minor in undergrad was the history of witchcraft, which was pretty fun. I'm happy to nerd out with any of y'all about witch hysteria or witchcraft in general. What else do I need to know? I'm obviously using notes just to keep myself on track. Let's see. I think that's it. I've published some poems in some pretty cool places. I've published a couple of articles in some pretty cool places. And I guess that qualifies me to teach y'all. So the next thing that we're going to do is, just as an overview, I'm going to give you a kind of how to class, some information on what especially these first 7 weeks will look like, as well as some syllabus highlights. And if you have any questions about the syllabus or about what I discussed today, you can include them in your notes for this first week. We'll be posting our notes each week on a discussion board, and a little bit more about that later. So first things first, let's look at the syllabus. We're going to have weekly videos, we're going to have scheduled activities each week, and you can always reach out to me via email, but most questions you should be able to find answered either in the syllabus or you can answer for each other in your weekly notes. But if you will, go ahead and open up your syllabus, and let's look at that course description. The course is an online iteration of Poetic Technique. Obviously, we're doing poetry at the end of the world, and I've designed this course with 3 major goals in mind. The first is I want to prepare you to participate in advanced poetry workshops. Not everyone here will move on to going to advanced poetry workshops, but I want all of you to feel really prepared to do so if that's something you're interested in. The second is I want the learning of poetry. I want figuring out what poems are and how they make meaning, how they communicate. I want that learning to be in your hands. So by the end of the term, I want you to feel equipped to discuss poems and to ask questions of resources that you know how to find and where to find. And finally, I want to equip each and every one of you to talk about poetry in terms of craft, in terms of structure. So a big emphasis of this course is building our vocabulary around poems. What do they consist of? How do we talk about them? So the course is divided kind of unofficially into a couple of sections. In the first, we're going to be concentrating mainly on the learning. The first 7 weeks, again, we'll have 2 short weekly videos that I'll make that concern different genres of poetry and different elements of craft. Things like speaker, audience, gesture, stuff like that. And you'll discuss this with your peers. Basically what I ask is that you take notes from the videos, and then at the end of each week, actually once you finish the second video, post those notes to Canvas onto a discussion board. You'll also be required as part of this to respond to other students' notes just to make sure that you're answering any questions that y'all have. And if somebody missed something, they can see your notes or you can help remind them. Finally, each week, I've probably mentioned, I might repeat myself a little bit, that we have weekly activities. Some of these are more traditional written assignments. Some of them are pretty untraditional assignments. I'll ask you, for example, to have an image face, and we'll discuss that more in the first video of the semester. And then let's talk about the second section of the course, which is the last 7 weeks of it. There are a couple of big things going on here. You'll be reading full-length books of poems, just 2, and you will also be submitting original poems of your own for workshop and participating in peer review workshop. So when we get to that part of the term, that's where the learning from the first half of the term is really going to come in handy. You'll use the words, the language around poetry that we picked up to describe what poems do rather than what we think they should. So we'll avoid value-laden language, for example. We won't say things like, I really like how, or I don't like how. Instead, we'll say things like, I see that the speaker has a single identity, or the speaker appears to be representative of multiple people, etc. And finally, at the very end of the semester, you'll have a final portfolio. You'll include the 2 poems you did in the first half of the term and the 2 poems you did in the last half of the term, and any other poems that were inspired by the reading, and they will be heavily revised. So we'll give some feedback in peer review workshops, I'll give some feedback on your poems, and you'll revise them for that final portfolio. And that's really it. So there's some bullet point objectives. Actually, I'm going to take a moment just to pause. I say that's really it. That might seem like a lot of information. I want to let you know that the class schedule breaks everything down week by week. So there are no surprises. All of the assignments are already listed on Canvas. They're all dated, so nothing should sneak up and surprise you. Here are some of the official objectives. By the end of the term, I expect everyone in this class will be able to do the following. You'll be able to identify conventions of different poetic genres, be able to read and discuss a poem's structural features. You'll be able to draft and revise both prompted poetry and totally unprompted poetry. You can, by the end of the term, create a syllabic sonnet and a dramatic monologue. You can provide constructive peer feedback using craft-based language, and you'll be able to very comfortably explicate poetry. A quick note on required materials. Again, we're only reading 2 full-length books of poetry this term. We'll vote on which books we want to read the second week. I'll send out a little ballot and you can list in order of your preference which books you're interested in. Other than that, the first 7 weeks of the term, I have very specifically cultivated packets of poems I've created. You shouldn't have to read more than I think a dozen poems a week. Totally doable, but you will need to really read those poems and really engage them in order to write good notes, do the activities correctly. And also, on that note, make sure to watch the videos. If you don't watch the videos, you might miss some assignment instructions, and you'll definitely miss the bulk of the learning of the course. I've taken online courses before. I know that just reading and writing assignments can get really, really boring and really old. So I'm making these videos, sometimes hopefully in like pretty places, just to kind of mix things up a little bit. That way we have at least a sense of community. We have a sense that we're talking to each other. So again, required materials, you'll have to buy 2 books of poetry. Doesn't matter what edition, doesn't matter if you have them online or in print. If you can find a free version, okay. If it's a living poet that we're reading, try to buy their book. Support local poets, support living poets. And then again, the first half of the semester, no required purchases. It'll just be packets that I upload online and provide to you. What else do I need to talk about? Oh, rest of the syllabus. You can read the policies. You should read the policies. They'll be very helpful for learning how to engage in discussion, for example. And finally, with our class schedule, I just want to make a couple of notes. First, all of our activities are due on Fridays. Unless I say something to change that, all of our activities are due on Fridays, which means you have the full week to get everything done that you need to. There are no surprises when you have things due. And then finally, we're going to start this week. We're going to hit the ground running and just get started with our learning. What we do this week will be the same as what we do for the next 7 weeks of the term, which is you'll watch 2 videos other than this one. You'll type up your notes as you're watching them. You'll post those notes ideally by Wednesdays. That way you have a chance to respond to other people's notes and other people's questions. So you'll post those notes on the discussion board. You'll finish responding no later than Friday, which is the due date for notes and responses. And then we have an activity. This week's is super simple. It's one you're going to be continuing throughout the semester. It's that image vase I talked about. And that's it. So again, for this week, we have 2 videos, notes, responses to notes, and an activity. And that's it. I think that's all I've got. Let me check my notes one more time. That's right. Last thing I want to say is if you have any questions about the syllabus, I just want to remind you, you can include those in your notes for this week. This is all of the nitty-gritty. I hope this first video hasn't been too awkward or painful. I hope we get the chance to meet. I would really, really appreciate the chance to meet y'all in person. Otherwise, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that you're here with me, and I hope that this course is useful to you. It's my goal to show you poems and to help you engage in poetry in a way that helps you see a reason to care, if you don't already. I studied poetry long before I gave a crap about poetry, and I've chosen poems that I really hope are, I hope they show you what poems are supposed to do. Reach out to me if you have any questions that aren't addressed in this video that you don't address in that first week of discussions. My email is always available. My inbox is always open. I respond within 48 hours. I don't respond within 2, but just shoot me a message. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I really look forward to having you this term. That's it.